The serene faces of nuns have been long idealized as the symbol of purity and devotion among humans. But in the twisted world of horror cinema, the purity is often exploited and undermined to unleash unfathomable terror among the audience. The filmmakers also use seemingly innocent souls and their beliefs to expose the darker aspects of human nature and portray it as supernatural horror to manipulate the audience. This weird combination of holiness and horror has now been used in multiple horror movies to produce multi-billion-dollar movies at the box office. This popular phenomenon of exploiting nuns is popularly known as Nunsploitation. This subgenre of horror movies, popular for combining horror and sexual themes, first found its popularity in the 70s with movies like Killer Nun, The Sinful Nuns, The Devils, and Alucarda. Since then, these movies have set their foot in pop culture for their representation of the purity of nuns, graphic violence, and supernatural elements. So what are you waiting for? Let's get into the video and discuss some popular Nunsploitation movies that have been critical and commercial successes. Let's go! But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Devils, 1971. Starring Academy Award-winning actress Vanessa Redgrave and actor Oliver Reed, this 1971 historical horror drama tells the story of a 17th century priest whose unorthodox methods of preaching led to some of the shocking revelations in his convent. Father Grandier, played by Oliver Reed, was a popular priest in Loudun, France. He was popular among the crowd for his charismatic persona and modern methods of preaching. Unable to digest the popularity of Father Grandier, his rival and power-hungry Cardinal Richelieu starts interrupting his peaceful life by spreading misleading stories about him. Sister Jean, played by Vanessa Redgrave, who's shown to be sexually attracted to the priest, soon starts accusing him of witchcraft and conspiring with the devil after getting rejected by him for her sexual urges. Soon, a few other nuns join Sister Jean and start complaining against the father and accusing him of being a devil worshipper. Upon its release, it suddenly became one of the most talked about and controversial movies for its extremely problematic themes like religious fanaticism, sexual urges of nuns, and corruption among church authorities. Inspired by the actual events of Loudun's possession of 1634, where Father Grandier was convicted of witchcraft and devil worship due to increasing complaints from the nuns of the convent, this film is truly disturbing for its dramatized visuals that not only tells the story of supernatural horror, but also portrays the horror elements of human tendencies like jealousy, conspiration, sexual urges, violence, and wickedness. Even though it's not as popular as other horror movies from its time, it's still a polarizing movie that has been popular among horror fans for portraying the realism of horror in humans. The Nun, 2018. The Nun is probably the most popular and well-known film on this list due to its significant contribution to modern pop culture. Released as the fifth installment in the Conjuring film series, this gothic horror movie is set in 1952 Romania, where a newly arrived nun starts experiencing unholy things in the monastery upon her arrival. The film opens with a secluded monastery in the mountains of Romania, where a nun takes her own life. A priest with a haunted past is sent to the monastery to investigate the matter. He asks one of the nuns, who has yet to finish her final vows, to accompany him to Romania to help him. The moment they arrived at the monastery, they became the victims of the demonic activities happening there. Soon they discover that the abbey has a dark history of demonic activities and is haunted by a supernatural entity named Valak, who does it all by taking the form of a nun. After going through a lot of troubles, they realized that the monastery was built on a site that acted as a door to hell, but it was closed using the blood of Jesus. The World War II bombing destroyed the relic and allowed Valak to re-emerge from hell. Starring Thaisa Farmiga as Sister Irene and Demian Bichir as Father Burke, The Nun was a box office success, earning more than $366 million on a small budget of $22 million. Although it was not as successful as The Conjuring in terms of critical appreciation, it was still interesting to watch. The eerie atmosphere of the monastery, scary elements, and Bonnie Aaron's performance as Valak were the reasons it became a success at the theaters. Alucarda, 1977. When Lucy Westenra, the vampire from Bram Stoker's Dracula, gives birth to a child named Alucarda in the woods, she asks one of the gypsies, who seemed to have helped her deliver her baby, to take her baby to the nearby convent. Of course, in fear of losing her daughter to the devil. Soon, she dies in the woods after childbirth, and her daughter Alucarda survives in the convent under the supervision of nuns. After spending years in the convent, Alucarda is joined by another young girl named Justine. Alucarda soon develops a close bond with Justine. Once, while exploring, they discover an old crypt and choose to explore it. Their exploration in the crypt releases an unknown satanic power and possesses both of them. Soon, both the girls start to experience demonic possession, which leads to a number of exorcisms performed by the priest of the convent. Known for its controversial themes and depiction of religious fanaticism, exploitation, and orthodox methods by the church, Alucarda has been deemed one of the most prominent political horror movies of all time. The exploitation and torture performed by the church authorities in the name of exorcism in this movie depict the realism and sufferings of many who lose their lives at the hands of religious fanatics. If you're in the mood to explore possession and exorcism, Alucarda is a must-watch for you. The First Omen, 2024. This one is a prequel to the 1976 blockbuster The Omen, starring Gregory Peck and Lee Remick, where they portrayed the parents of a prophesized Antichrist. The 2024 film depicts the events before the birth of the Antichrist and the prophecy that was about to bring a lot of catastrophes into the world. Set in the backdrop of left-wing protest in Rome, the film opens with the arrival of an American novitiate, Margaret, in an orphanage. In the convent, she meets a girl named Luz, who asks to accompany her to a club before her final vow. Margaret reluctantly accepts her invitation. During their night out in the club, Margaret and Luz meet two men and start dancing with them. After a while, Margaret loses her senses and wakes up in the orphanage the following day. Despite the warning of the church authorities, she soon befriends a mistreated orphan named Carlita. Even after several warnings of Carlita being an evil soul, Margaret doesn't care until she starts experiencing demonic hallucinations herself. Soon she finds herself pregnant and realizes that she was forcibly assaulted during her night out with Luz. Despite multiple attempts to abort the baby, she remains unsuccessful and discovers some shocking secrets about her own life and the prophecy. Looking at the movie's critical success, this film did a fantastic job of keeping up the legacy of the original 1976 film. Surprisingly, it's a horrifying tale of the origin of the Antichrist. It's filled with symbolism and an ode to the Bible, where a virgin, Mary, conceives Christ in her belly for the upliftment of human society. Similarly, in the movie, a virgin Margaret gives birth to the Antichrist in similar circumstances for the destruction of human society. If you haven't seen the movie, you're missing out on one of the recent best suspenseful, scary, and disturbing movies. School of the Holy Beast, 1974. When a young woman named Maya decides to join a convent as a nun to investigate the death of her mother years back, she starts to discover a series of sadistic sexual dens of pleasure inside the convent, where the authorities have been successfully hiding their sexually charged selves under the disguise of their religious drag faces. After discovering their secrets, Maya also gets dragged into their torture games and is forced to participate in a few disgusting, sadistic activities. Eventually, she finds the truth about the murder of her mother and takes her revenge in the end. If you're a fan of Japanese cinema, it's evident that they make some of the best trashy, sexually explicit movies ever, and School of the Holy Beast is one of them. Though it was a pinky violence movie with weird fantasies, graphic violence, sadistic themes, and sexually explicit scenes, School of the Holy Devil still manages to bring everything into the tale, what it promises at the beginning of the movie. It's suspenseful, violent, trashy, and a masterpiece in the genre. So if you love action and gore, watch this movie. Killer Nun, 1979. Directed by Giulio Berruti and starring Anita Ekberg and Joe D'Alessandro, Popular among audiences as two of the most prominent sex symbols of the 70s, this film is another example of the Nunsploitation subgenre in Italian movies. After the removal of her brain tumor, Sister Gertrude returned to a Catholic hospital to resume her work as a caretaker in the senior department of the hospital. Even though she successfully survived cancer with the surgery, she never found a way out of the trauma she suffered while struggling with cancer. While trying to cope with her current situation, she befriends another nun named Sister Matthew, who helps her steal drugs from the hospital. Sister Gertrude soon starts leading a double life with the help of her newly acquired taste for drugs. She starts visiting the town to have sex with random strangers and kills a few patients in the hospital in a drug-induced state. Though she remembers some of the fragments of the events, she seems to have forgotten everything about the killings. At the time of its release, Killer Nun was considered a nasty video movie rather than cinema for its over-the-top graphic scenes and numerous sexually explicit scenes. It sparked so much controversy that it was even banned in a few countries for depicting R-rated stuff, but today it's widely considered a cult classic for breaking the stereotypes and paving a path for numerous movies in the genre that turned out to be huge successes in forthcoming years. Dark Waters, 1994. Unlike most horror movies, where some innocent women struggle to associate themselves with the devil and conceive his baby, Dark Water is a fresh take on a revised story that takes a U-turn and shows a young woman trying her best to avoid any contact with her demonic mother. The film tells the story of Elizabeth returning to her native island during a heavy rainstorm. Even though she was never meant to return to the island, her father's sudden demise brings her back to the island to keep an eye on the donations to a convent by her late father. She meets Sarah, a guide, who accompanies and educates her about the convent. One day, while researching in the library, Elizabeth and Sarah find an illustration of a demon painting that depicts the powers of a powerful amulet. She then discovers a secret passage in the library that soon becomes her worst nightmare. The events that followed since her discovery of the passage led to the release of a demonic power, who turns out to be Elizabeth's own mother. This film is a fresh take on a demonic story, which is still refreshing to watch. It has everything you expect from a horror movie. Jump scares, blood, violence, human sacrifice, demons, possessions, and suspense. If you want to watch something different from the generic horror flicks, this is a movie that will help give you nightmares.
Who are you?
The Conjuring 2, 2016. The Conjuring might be the only movie on our list that doesn't feature any nun to lead the movie, but it certainly portrays a demon posing as a nun to disrupt human lives. Directed by James Wan, who's given us some of the best horror movies in the 21st century, it again tries to explore the world of Ed and Lorraine Warren's Ghost Expedition series for the second time. The film takes inspiration from the real incidents of the Amityville Horror and Enfield Poltergeist and portrays it in a heavily dramatized way. The film begins with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren and their lives after the investigation of the widely covered the Amityville Horror incident. After the investigation of the case, Lorraine finds herself on the verge of a dilemma, whether to continue their life as paranormal researchers or not, due to some disturbing visions from a shape-shifting demon who poses as a nun. But after receiving numerous requests from a family in London to investigate some demonic possession at their house, they agree to help them with the case. Though the couple initially fails to track any possessions or unholy activities in the house, which the demon makes them believe to be a series of staged dramas to get popularity, later Lorraine uses her dreams and psychic powers to discover the truth of the nun. Though it lacked the charm of its predecessor, it still became a massive success at the box office and was well received by most critics. It has some really amazing scenes that are terrifying to watch and scary enough to give you chills. Immaculate, 2024, starring Sydney Sweeney in the titular role of Sister Cecilia, who, after her survival from an accident, turned to Christianity. She gets an invitation to join a prestigious Roman Catholic convent in Italy. She gladly accepts the invitation and reaches Italy to complete her vows. Known for housing the Holy Nail Relic, which was used to crucify Jesus, the convent has been considered one of the most prestigious institutions among believers for its religious significance. After completing her vows, Sister Cecilia finds herself pregnant, even though she never had intercourse with any man. After this, she soon gets treated as the next Virgin Mary by the inhabitants of the convent. Soon, a pregnant Cecilia is taken into custody and is denied any human contact or medical help. When she tries to fake a miscarriage, she finds herself in the crypts, tied up. Later, she learns from Father Tedici that she has been the vessel for an experiment performed by Father Tedici himself that utilizes DNA samples from the Holy Nail to create a new Messiah for the world. Though many have died during the process, Sister Cecilia somehow survived the experiment. If you look closely, the themes and the story of a virgin nun conceiving a child vaguely resemble another movie on our list, The First Omen. In both of the movies, young nuns' bodies are reduced to vessels for the birth of some supernatural entity without their consent. Declared the modern revival of the Nunsploitation movie by many fans, Immaculate reimagines the subgenre with some modern yet controversial issues in American society. Along with religious fanaticism and mass hysteria, it also addresses issues like the right to abortion and female rights under the backdrop of a horror movie.
Вперед! Штурмуйте!
Flavia the Heretic, 1974. A typical yet most notorious nunsploitation film in the genre, Flavia the Heretic is set in the 1400s, when women had no rights of their own and were treated as mere subjects by other men. To escape from this, a young girl named Flavia chooses her own lover and tries to run away with him, but they're soon captured by her aristocratic father and are brought back to his house. Disgusted by her act, the nobleman beheads Flavia's lover and locks her away in a convent, where he tries to convert her into a nun. After spending several months in the nunnery, Flavia befriends a Jewish man and again tries to run away from the convent. Because of her bad luck, they're again captured and punished by her father. Not much time after the incident, Italy is invaded by Muslim rulers. The invasion allows Flavia to escape from her misery. She seduces the leader of the army, Ahmed, and uses him to avenge everyone, including the nuns and her father, for the torture they boasted upon her. Flavia the Heretic is a brutal nunsploitation movie that is associated with the themes of sexual repression, religious oppression, and revenge. Though there's no historical evidence of the story, the movie still uses a heavily dramatized story to showcase the horrors of violence and abuse performed by powerful men. Unlike other movies on our list, this movie doesn't depict any demonic powers, but rather uses the horrors of humanity to tell a disturbing story. The Nun and the Devil, 1973. The perfect adjective to describe this movie would be chaos or absolute chaos. This 1973 movie is nothing but a series of chaotic affairs that makes this film quite different from other movies in this genre. Although all these movies use exploitation, sexual desire, demonic possession, religious extremism, and witchcraft as the central plot of the movies, The Nun and the Devil portrays the manipulation and notoriety of the human brain to depict the horror instead. Although this movie uses sexuality and violence to picture some of the fragments, this is more of an art film rather than a true horror film. Sister Julia, played by Anne Haywood, is a beautiful yet cunning nun who's been trying to secure the position of Mother Superior at the Sant Arsengelo convent after the death of the previous Mother Superior. Famous for its scenic architecture, picturesque location, and yes, beautiful nuns, all of whom belong to wealthy families, it's a popular destination for thousands of visitors. Most of these nuns are believed to be put there by their parents as a punishment to stay away from their lovers. Sister Julia, who's keen on winning the position, wants to gain the position by any means. So she uses her manipulative brain at work and exploits the sanctity of the convent by allowing the nuns to indulge themselves in sexual activities by forgetting their holy vow. Known for its controversial themes like corruption, sexuality, manipulation, and abuse of power in the church, this is not just a movie, but a mirror for the world that we mostly ignore in the shadow of religious practices. Dark Habits, 1973. Directed by two-time Oscar-nominated Pedro Almodovar, famous for portraying complex narratives, desire, passion, identity, and melodrama in his movies, Dark Habits tells the story of unconventional life within a religious convent. It's a dark comedy that blends comedy, drama, and humor to tell the story of Yolanda Bell. Yolanda, who is a cabaret singer, takes refuge in a local convent after her boyfriend dies from a drug overdose. After joining the convent, she realizes that the convent convent was once a hotspot for drug addicts, prostitutes, and murderers, but now it offers shelter and redemption to fallen women of society. With funny names and peculiar personalities, the nuns in the convent are far from ordinary abbeys, but they have no other place to hide from the law. Yolanda decides to create her own sanctuary inside the convent. Known for his dark humor and dramatic visuals, director Pedro Almodovar tries to visualize the story with different themes and symbolism. The convent depicted in this film is a contradiction to any other nunnery ever shown in any film before. All the nuns in the convent have their own dark secrets to tell. They aren't some juvenile virgin girls trying to join the League of God for the sake of their sacred vows. Instead, they're stuck in their dark past, which doesn't allow them to survive anywhere other than the abbey. Satanic Pandemonium, 1975. Satanic Pandemonium is a Mexican film from 1975 which was released in Mexico as La Sexorcista. It represents the story of Sister Maria, a local nun who finds her solace in Satan and breaks the sacred vow she once made to her Lord Jesus. While exploring through the nearby woods, Sister Maria encounters a handsome young man who seduces her and breaks her sacred vow by engaging herself in lovemaking, of course. Unaware of the fact that the young man was none other than Satan himself, who purposefully seduced her to sin to disrupt the sanctity of the convent. After committing the sin, Sister Maria starts experiencing hallucinations and engages herself in the profanity of God. She soon starts committing murders in the building, which causes much anarchy among the nuns. Seeing his plans coming to life, Satan again confronts her, but in the end, even Sister Maria seems to have realized the sin she has committed within the possession of the devil and kills herself to save the other nuns. It's a disturbing film that pushes the boundaries and forces the audience to confront their beliefs and fears. It also represents themes like temptation, sexual desires, sins, redemption, and the horrors of human tendencies that can cause more destruction than we can imagine. Mother Joan of the Angels, 1960. The horror genre has always been the most snubbed movie genre in cinema. Only a few horror movies have made it to win prestigious awards in this century-old business. The next movie on our list is one such gem and gathered critical acclaim and won a special jury prize at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival in 1961. Mother Joan of the Angels is also the second film on our list that takes inspiration from the Loudun possessions, the other being the Devils. After a local priest was burned at the stake for sexually exploiting young nuns of a convent, a priest named Father Joseph Serene is sent to the location to investigate the matter. Before leaving for the convent, Father Joseph was warned about the increasing demonic possession in the convent. After arriving at the abbey, Father Joseph meets the abbey's mother Joan, who herself has been possessed by 8 demons, and tries to seduce Father Joseph to release him from his sacred vow and commit a sin. Father Joseph refrains himself from Mother Superior, befriends a non-possessed nun, and tries to find the solution. As Father Joseph tries to dig deeper into the convent's dark past, he finds himself increasingly entwined in emotional and spiritual chaos. Soon, his faith and devotion start fading, and he starts to become insane. With issues like suppressed desires, emotional turmoil, fear, and self-discovery, this movie is a masterpiece that every horror fan should try watching at least once. Sister Death 2023. A prequel to his own 2017 film, Veronica, Spanish director Paco Plaza, known for his extensive work in the horror genre, relives the haunting past of the events before the infamous death of Veronica using a Ouija board. Set in a convent during the post-Civil War in Spain, the film tells the story of Narcissa with extraordinary psychic abilities. Upon arriving at the convent school, she takes on a teaching job. Soon, Narcissa starts experiencing horrific nightmares and mysterious supernatural activities around her. She also discovers that the abbey is haunted by an entity named the Girl, who was sexually violated, which resulted in her pregnancy. Due to the Mother Superior's negligence, she lost her child and killed herself and now haunts the abbey. Hearing this, Narcissa promises to help her and releases her soul using her powers. Sister Death masterfully combines elements of psychological horror and gothic storytelling, creating suspense and emotional depth. The film explores themes of guilt, redemption, and the enduring power of the past, all set against the backdrop of a society struggling with the aftermath of war. It is full of suspense, eeriness, and gothic horror scenes that will make you watch this movie repeatedly. Marvelous verdict. After discussing all the movies that somehow intertwine the subgenre of Nunsploitation in different perspectives and stories, we have to give them the credit for creating a niche for themselves that is now being loved by millions of fans all around. These films, mostly known for their provocative scenes, exploitation, violence, and murder with supernatural elements in the background, tend to show social taboos, religious fanaticism, and the corruption inside the walls of convents. However, these movies were initially considered controversial, regressive, and cheap. Now, these films have found success with the release of films like The Nun and The Conjuring, which have been critically and commercially successful among audiences. A few of the other movies, like The Devil, Alucarda, and Mother Joan of the Angels, have depicted the horrors of human fears and desires, turning them into cult movies decades after their release. We also have to agree that some of these movies talk about much more important topics than just sex and violence. For example, they talk about the religious fanaticism and blinding faith that humans tend to believe in religious figures. So what do you think about these movies? Which one are you likely to watch? Let us know in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos.